Hi, Maya. Can you hear me?
Hey Ed, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Let hold my
Are we going to be on? Are people going to see our faces?
Yeah, so once we get started, I'm gonna turn on your camera and John's camera.
Okay.
And then so basically what's going to happen is I'm going to have to add everybody individually at a time once it's their turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to Councilwoman and all of the respondents, I'm gonna have John or you, it doesn't really matter. We'll introduce them one at a time, and then I'll go through the attendees, find their name, and then promote them.
Okay. Yeah. John and I had a conversation. He's going to do all the introductions and act as the master of ceremonies.
Okay, great.
And we're going to record the webinar, right?
Yes, it's all being recorded.
Okay. Yeah, it might be good to put it up on YouTube or, at least have it as a historical document.
Yeah, definitely. At the very least, keep it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm still configuring some of my audio stuff.
Okay, well, I'll go on mute. I'm just sitting here getting ready.
Okay, great. And can you still hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Okay, great. I just switched my audio over. Okay, I'll pay attention for when John gets on, and then at 10:30, you guys go ahead and get started.
Maya, have you checked out whether we can forward the PowerPoint presentation that can be seen?
Do you mean forward it to everybody
No, no, no.
attending?
I just mean when we are live that it'll be pacing through so that people see it as I talk.
Oh, yeah, I can either screen share. So right now, I don't know if you see up on the screen, I made a little starting soon slide.
Yep, I see that. Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
so I will share your PowerPoint in the same way, unless if you have, I'm not sure if if your screen has a button to screen share.
No,
Um,
I'll let you go ahead and do the screen share, and the visuals look really good now. So I
okay,
don't
great.
do anything other than talk, or I'll prompt you if the slide doesn't come up at the right time.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, John, I assume you can hear me and everything's plugged in. You can see the screen. I think you're on mute, so I can't hear you, but
I was muted.
yeah,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. So I think looks like we're all set up.
But we need my video isn't on.
I think, okay. On my
Okay.
screen, it just started, it says start my video. So I think Maya is going to enable us to do video. There we are.
I think I just turned on for both of you, so
I can see John.
we got 1 minute to go and then feel free to start.
Do we know how many people are on right now? Or are we?
It looks like we have 11 attendees at the moment.
And I think what we're going to do on the Q&A, are people going to put their questions in the Q&A or in the chat? Or
Yes,
both?
so chat is disabled for attendees, but all attendees do have a Q&A option. So attendees, go ahead and put your questions in that Q&A box and we will do a Q&A session at the end.
Perfect.
Going to wait a few more minutes. We thank people for joining, but we want to give others an opportunity. So give us a couple, 3 minutes. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started. We thank all of you for taking the time to join this webinar. My name is V. John White, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Technologies. I'm happy to welcome all of you today. CEERT has been working with our colleagues at Grid Lab, which is a think tank that works on solving energy transition issues. Ed Smeloff is our consultant and board member and has led the development of the report that we're going to discuss today. In addition to the work that goes on in Sacramento around climate change and clean energy, there is also a significant effort underway in the city of Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is the largest municipal utility in the country and has almost a third of California's load in its jurisdiction. Under the leadership of Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Bass and the City Council, LA has put together the LA 100 plan and is in the process of implementing it through their strategic long-range resource plan. Joining us today to talk about the city's engagement and involvement with clean energy is Council Member Katie Yaroslavsky. Ms. Yaroslavsky is the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee of the City Council and has taken an active role in the development of the LA Clean Energy Plan. So Council Member Yaroslavsky, we're delighted to have you with us and happy to have you say a few words.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to join the webinar this morning. I'm here with Kristen Torres-Pauling, who many of you probably know. She's my Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy and Planning. A big thank you to V. John White and the rest of the CEERT team for their long-standing role as a leader in advancing climate solutions in the energy sector and for CEERT's service, advising DWP on LA 100 and the strategic long-term resource plan. There really isn't another organization that fills the specific role that you all have played for decades now, and you've really built a truly remarkable shop here that's led the way through some of the hairiest of climate and energy questions. So thank you for what you do. The city of LA is still thoroughly committed to the goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by 2035, which of course we scoped out through our groundbreaking report detailing pathways to that goal in the LA 100 study. The equity strategies report for that study is forthcoming later this year, which we're really excited about. The equity strategies is a 2-year study in partnership with NREL and UCLA. It brings together LA-based community justice organizations and stakeholders in a steering committee to guide this unprecedented effort. I'm confident that this next step toward realizing 100% carbon-free energy sets forth the path for an energy future that is both equitable and achievable. 2 things which are, as we know, are both important and key. Just as LA 100 equity strategies is about challenging our legacy practices, we have so many aspects of our energy future that require a really profound shift away from the status quo. And as you all know, transmission is one of those parts of the power system that we need to crack open and re-examine. There's really no way for us to meet either our local or state clean energy goals without addressing transmission. Frankly, we would have needed to address transmission in one way or another, regardless of climate goals, as LA owns plenty of aging infrastructure that requires our attention, whether or not we care about the climate crisis. But the climate crisis presents us with an incredible opportunity to do that. I'm looking forward to reading the details in the report about the LA Basin's transmission needs soon, especially in the context of a motion I brought recently that was passed by the City Council that would put public health, safety, air quality, and other guardrails around the Scattergood Generating Station Green Hydrogen Project. And 2 years ago this month, the County of LA published the LA County Climate Vulnerability Assessment, which rated transmission lines as one of the most vulnerable physical infrastructure systems out of all the systems assessed. Of LA County's nearly 1,000 miles of high voltage transmission lines, 96% are in areas that will experience moderate or high change in exposure to extreme heat. So if we don't figure this out, we're neither meeting our clean energy targets, nor are we meeting our obligations to prepare for a hotter world. We really have to do better to plan for a more resilient and renewable future. And your work and partnership are important to helping us get there. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful presentation today.
Thank you, Council Member. We really appreciate you being here and appreciate your leadership. And it's a new day in LA. We've been working in LA back since Richard Riordan was mayor, and let's just say it's you come a long way, and now you're leading the pack, and the rest of us are learning from what you all are doing in Los Angeles. So we're grateful to have you with us and grateful for your leadership and engagement.
Thanks very much.
Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Ed Smeloff, who's going to present some slides that summarize the results of our transmission report. And then following his presentation, we're going to have 4 respondents from different parts of the state talk about different aspects of the problem. So Ed, thank you.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to express my appreciation to Grid Lab that provided some of the financial support for the report, and also thank Maya Leroy, who has been a really vital participant in putting together the report that we're releasing, doing fact checking, organizing the report as well as the seminar. So the report is called California's Path to Decarbonization, Transmission Planning, Permitting, and Timely Construction. We can't overemphasize the importance of transmission as the vital link to a clean energy future. This report that we're releasing builds on an earlier report that we released in March that identified a variety of new and upgraded high voltage transmission projects that are needed to decarbonize California's economy, going beyond just the existing uses of electricity and thinking forward about how electricity is going to be used in the transportation sector and elsewhere to really revitalize the economy. So our report has 7 sections. I'm going to focus on several of those. The first section reviews the CAISO's excellent 2022-2023 transmission plan, which was completed and released in May of this year and adopted a lot of the projects that we had earlier put forward in our earlier version of the plan. The second section of our plan discusses the need for clean energy development in the Central Valley and the additional transmission that's going to be required to really leverage the amount of potential clean energy that the Central Valley can provide the rest of the state. Our third focus is going to be on opportunities and the need to phase down and then phase out fossil fuel generation in the Los Angeles basin and the greater Southern California area. And it's vital that we increase transmission coming into the LA region from multiple directions, from the south, from the east, and from the north and northeast. And we'll get into that in the presentation. 3 sections of the report address more technical issues related to getting the transmission from the identification of need to having steel in the ground and being operational. And those focus on permitting, the interconnection process to tie in new projects to the grid, and actually the project construction process, which is really important that it be done in a timely manner. So we will be focusing in this presentation, lastly, on the permitting process, the challenges that face the state, and what the Public Utilities Commission and other policymakers need to do. So let's go on to the next slide. And this next slide shows how much has been spent on utility scale transmission in California over the last decade or so. And we can see that there's been really a long pause in building the needed transmission in California. The last big project that was built and completed about a decade ago was in northern Los Angeles and Kern counties, Tehachapi Regional Transmission Project, which was completed by Southern California Edison. And that project, if you go up to the Lancaster, Palmdale, Antelope Valley areas, really opened up a vast amount of solar and wind potential, and is a key reason why California has surpassed its renewable portfolio development goals up to this point. However, in order to get to the full 100% clean energy, which the California legislature and former Governor Brown endorsed by 2045 or even earlier, which I think is going to be needed, we're going to require significant amounts of new investments in transmission, perhaps as much as $30 billion or so over the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a major endeavor. We're off to a good start with the 22-23 transmission plan that was adopted by the CAISO. And I'd like to review a little bit of that and then talk about some additional needs in the state and gaps that need to be filled. So the next slide shows that the CAISO has adopted a very strategic, long-term comprehensive approach to transmission planning, which is fairly new in California. We've done things a bit piecemeal in the past and has not been as coordinated as it needs to be, but the state agencies for energy have come together, put together a memorandum of understanding, and the CAISO has taken leadership in developing a strategic approach. And they call this strategic approach a zonal focus, where they've identified resource zones that are rich in solar, wind, geothermal resources, and which are the places where we're going to need over the next 10 to 15 years to develop a lot of new resources. You can see the quantities of resources in the table that's in the slide. So, you know, there's multiple benefits, of course, of expanding transmission, as the city councilor said, that it is needed not just to bring new resources into the mix and to integrate renewable technology onto the grid, but it's also needed to improve system reliability, to reduce congestion and therefore reduce the energy costs, and really importantly, as we saw last year, enabling the state to better weather and manage extreme weather events, which unfortunately we're going to be exposed to in the future. So transmission is the key resource that links all of these goals together. The way the transmission plan is put together by the CAISO is they take from the California Public Utilities Commission resource portfolios, packages of generation that to be developed in the future from their annual integrated resource planning process. And the PUC hands over to the CAISO typically 2, sometimes 3 portfolios. One's a base case, which is the foundation for their plan, and then sensitivity cases, which allows them to look even further into the future and see what other alternatives are. But you can see in the table that the base case and the sensitivity case are starkly different. The base case gets us to 38 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, which is about, you know, we are currently at around 60 million metric tons. And the sensitivity case would cut that in half, get us down to 30 million metric tons in the electricity sector by 2030 and down to 25 million metric tons in 2035, even with the expectation that we're going to have a lot of electric vehicles on the road. We're going to have a much more electrified transportation system. So you can see we have a very large need for new resources to be able to meet the requirements of the state. And we're going to have to build somewhere on the order of about 7,000 megawatts of new clean energy annually to be able to meet the SB 100, zeroing out carbon goals. So let's go and take a look at some of the specific projects that have been recommended. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, for the LA region, we're going to need to have new transmission that comes in from the southeast, comes in from the east, and comes in from the north to be able to reduce the dependence on the fossil fuel plants in there. So there were 3 major zones that were recommended for transmission development in this most recent plan. And they have names. They're called the East of Pisgah, which goes up to Southern Nevada, the Southern California Eastern Project, which goes across Riverside County to connect into Arizona, and then the Imperial Valley San Diego Project, which would connect further south in Arizona and even enable some projects to come in from northern Mexico. So the projects are really, these 3 zonal projects are really essential for solar, geothermal, and battery projects in Southern California. We can see that in a decade, 15 years from now, a total of about 35 gigawatts of new clean energy could flow over these lines, which would meet a substantial amount of the requirements of the state of California. Last year, during that peak conditions, we had about 50 gigawatts of electric demand. So the 2 projects that are going through Imperial County have about total cost of about $2.6 billion. And they will connect to a third new line that you can see on the map that goes up from a new substation on the San Diego Orange County border up to the Serrano substation. These three projects will be competitively bid by the CAISO to identify the developers that are going to build these projects. These projects have to be permitted. They will be challenged, a challenging process for permitting, and we really urge high-level attention by policymakers in California to make sure that these projects get built. They're a major link to the LA region and are going to be required to meet the state's needs. The second path, which is the other map on this slide, shows some upgrades to the existing system that's operated by Southern California Edison that goes across Riverside County from the Colorado River substation right on the Arizona border and links into big substations that are located in Riverside and Orange counties and terminates at the Serrano substation, which creates a looped system that connects both the more southern transmission lines that are being developed with the existing lines that go through Riverside County. So let's go on to the next slide. And this shows the third new pathway that's going to be needed from Southern Nevada that will come down into San Bernardino to the Lugo, Victorville, Adelanto complex of substations that serve both LADWP and the CAISO system. The selection of a recommended project here, because you see some alternatives, has been delayed by the CAISO, and they're evaluating the cost effectiveness, currently evaluating the cost effectiveness of alternative projects. And we expect a decision shortly this summer on which project will be recommended in their plan. And it also will be competitively solicited for development. This pathway is really needed to connect California, a stronger link to Southern Nevada to enable the development of both solar and geothermal energy in Southern Nevada and for the delivery of wind energy from Wyoming. So there's a substantial new line that's being built from Wyoming down the Southern Nevada, and that line will enable California to take advantage of a very robust resource in Wyoming. So let's go on to what's missing and what needs to be done in the future in the upcoming transmission plan that the CAISO is currently in the process of developing. They have their study plan together and they're beginning to do the analysis that's necessary. So the CAISO is doing two things this year. They're doing their 23-24 transmission plan, and they're doing an update of a 20-year longer-term transmission outlook. And that's been very helpful in sort of identifying innovative solutions that go beyond the current needs that need to be addressed. So there's sort of three missing pieces in a comprehensive plan for California. One is the need for more transmission in the Central Valley that will enable the development of a significant amount of new generation in the Central Valley. You can see from the slide, if you look down to the PG&E Fresno and PG&E East Kern, that there's an enormous amount of potential for solar, which will likely be developed in a co-located fashion with battery storage in the Central Valley. So the Central Valley is going through, as much of the other state, really challenges from climate change. It's impacting. We're seeing extreme heat events. We're seeing major flooding, seeing sustained droughts. And so there needs to be some new resources put into the Central Valley that both promotes long-term economic development and jobs, as well as powering the rest of the state with the potential for clean energy, much of it which can be developed on lands that are not useful or no longer useful for agricultural production. So the CAISO 20-year transmission outlook assumed there'd be a need for 53 gigawatts of utility scale solar by 2040. At least 20 and perhaps as much as 30 gigawatts of that could come from the Central Valley. It's also going to be needed, new transmission is going to be needed in the Central Valley to phase out fossil generation in the Bay Area. The Bay Area, like Los Angeles, is a big load pocket, which has a number of fossil gas-fired generators located in it. And if it's going to be phased down, we're going to need to have new transmission from the Bay Area. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, because I want to leave some more time for the others. So as we mentioned at the beginning of this, one of the major goals in California is to retire and phase down the use of gas-fired generation in the Los Angeles basin. Approximately 40% in 2020 of the electricity that was consumed in the Los Angeles basin came from the existing fleet of fossil generators. So, and that has actually increased over the recent past, partly because of the closure of the San Onofre nuclear plant, and partly because of the closure of coal-fired generation in the Pacific Northwest. So transmission is really going to be essential so that LA doesn't increase its dependence on local gas-fired generation, which, has a lot of deleterious effects. So as part of their 22-23 study, the CAISO looked at what would happen if the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility was no longer available, if it is shut down. A lot of generation in the LA basin depends on storage coming out of the Aliso Canyon facility. And the CAISO determined that about 33,700 megawatts of gas-fired generation would be impacted and not available during the summer months if Aliso Canyon was not available. So they identified in their 20-year transmission outline alternative transmission solutions to reduce dependence on Aliso Canyon. And they looked at a number of solutions. They identified 3 most viable options. All of those options included a high voltage direct current subsea cable that runs from the Diablo Canyon switchyard in San Luis Obispo County to 2 potential terminals in the Los Angeles basin. This is a project that has an opportunity to serve both Los Angeles Department of Water and Power as well as the CAISO system. The CAISO called this project the Diablo South HVDC project for high voltage direct current. It's also called the Pacific Transmission Expansion Project, and there are companies interested in actively developing this opportunity. This opportunity here, I'm showing here the 12 largest gas-fired power plants in the Los Angeles region, shows the amount of gas that's necessary to power them on a daily basis, as well as their rated megawatt capacity. So just to put this in perspective, the amount of gas that's consumed at these power plants is equivalent to the amount of gas needed to heat approximately 15 million homes. So with the key element on closing and reducing dependence on Aliso Canyon and the fossil industry is to develop the transmission lines that we've talked about, the ones that have already been identified in Imperial County and across Riverside County, as well as a new line that would come in from the north and take pressure off of the main existing lines that come from the northern part of the state into the Los Angeles region. So the next slide will show, what are the benefits of this Diablo South HVDC line, as well as it's about a 250-mile subsea cable that would come around Point Conception. So the CAISO Outlook report identified multiple benefits from doing this transmission line. In addition to decreasing the need to operate gas-fired power plants in Southern California, it also reduces congestion on the transmission lines that already come into Southern California from Midway in the Central Valley in Kern County to the Vincent substation in Los Angeles County. This is going to be critical to protect the system from contingencies, particularly when we have these high temperature, extreme heat events in California. And also this transmission line would also create a pathway for offshore wind developments, which is being planned for the Central Coast, called the Morro Bay wind development areas. So there are multiple benefits of this. CEERT is strongly supporting the development of this line. However, it has not been included yet in the transmission plan that's been adopted by the CAISO. The CAISO did recognize that it has value and has indicated that they would be interested in approving it if the state's utility commission indicated that it was needed as part of its plans to reduce dependence on fossil fuel generation. So we're recommending and urging the PUC to indicate that it does support the reduction of fossil use in the fossil power plant use in the Los Angeles basin, and support the development of this project. These projects take a long time to permit and build. There are supply chain issues, is lots of transmission is being considered in other parts of the United States and in Europe. So it's an urgent need for a decision to be made on approving this project, and we're encouraging the Public Utilities Commission to do so. So let's go down to the last slide. So the CAISO recommended that 21 specific policy-driven projects be developed in California with a total budget of about $7.5 billion. The other two projects that are still under consideration, the one I mentioned from Southern Nevada to Victorville, and then the subsea HVDC line. Those could add, another $3-4 billion to the total budget that's needed. I do want to summarize by saying, all in all, CEERT is very pleased with the tremendous step forward that has been taken by the CAISO in planning for transmission expansion after a nearly decade-long pause in the process. So we need to build upon what the CAISO is doing. The zonal focus really is a paradigm change. It is going to change the way we think about developing new clean energy projects. It should impact the interconnection process that developers are using to plan for connecting to the grid, and it should impact the decisions that are made by the local procurement entities, the load-serving entities across the state, including many of the community choice aggregation entities. So lastly, I'm going to end and say that the most important thing in the immediate future that needs to happen is permitting reform. So we've identified the need. We've outlined where these projects need to go, be located at, but the key thing that needs to happen is they need to be permitted by the Public Utilities Commission. And unfortunately, over the past decade or so, that process is bogged down with considerable delays to much smaller projects. We've seen projects delayed both by the amount of time it's taken for the utilities to prepare environmental assessments, but also by the Public Utilities Commission in the review of those projects. So the report identifies it. It looks at a report that was done by the Clean Air Task Force. I'm not going to get into that, but there's an urgent need to reform permitting. There are several proposals in front of the legislature this session to do so. And there is a attempt at self-reform by the Public Utilities Commission. We're participating, CEERT is participating in that. It's gotten off to a slow start, and we're not completely satisfied with that the commission staff understands what the barriers are, but we are pleased to see that they understand they need to address the issue. So let me finish my comments here. Looking forward to the reactions of the other panelists. And I really would like to thank everybody for their attention and attending this webinar. So John, I'll turn it back to you and let you introduce the respondents.
Thank you, Ed. And thanks, everybody. We're really, really pleased with the turnout and grateful for everyone's participation. So our first commenter respondent is our friend Bill McGavern. Bill's a member of the CEERT board and a longtime advocate for the Coalition for Clean Air and the most recent recipient of the Air Resources Board Hagen-Schmidt Awards. So Bill, nice to have you with us.
Well, thanks very much, John, and really want to thank CEERT and Ed Smeloff for this presentation and the work that you've been doing on transmission and other really important clean energy issues. It's clear to me that we are going to need significantly more transmission in order to solve our twin crises of air pollution and climate change. California still has by far the worst air pollution in the entire United States. And of course, with climate change, we're seeing extreme heat. We're seeing, alternating drought and floods. This weekend, it's projected to be 100 degrees or higher in many parts of inland California. That also will exacerbate the smog problem. So we'll probably have unhealthy levels of smog in much of the state. And, it's been noted by some observers, I think it's really true, that the environmental movement is in a stage of transition where it's really a movement that was started to protect important and beautiful places. And, for many years, I represented the Sierra Club, which really got its start in protecting, California's Sierra, and expanded to include many other important wild places around the country. And that's really at the core of the origins of the environmental movement. But now, as environmentalists, many of us realize that while continuing to protect those beautiful places, we also need to do some building. We need to be able to permit and build the important infrastructure that will help us to reduce the emissions that are making people sick and altering the very climate of the planet. So I think it's important that we keep a balance where we're making sure that we can do that permitting, but also do it in a way that respects the needs of communities, especially our environmental justice communities, to participate in the process and not have their needs ignored again. We clearly do need more transmission in order to end fossil fuel generation in the South Coast area, which continues to have the worst smog problem in the entire country. And we also are going to need to electrify our transportation sector and our building sector. And this will be particularly important in areas like the South Coast and the San Joaquin Valley, which has the worst particle air pollution problem in the entire country. We have a number of important standards and rules that are bringing us towards that electrification, like the clean car and clean truck standards at the Air Resources Board, appliance standards that are being adopted at the Energy Commission and some of the air districts and are coming at the Air Resources Board. And we are going to need more electric transmission in order to support that transition. So I will close there and look forward to hearing from others.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Veronica Padilla Campos from Pacoima Beautiful.
And I'm not seeing Veronica in the attendee list. So Veronica, if you are on, please go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, and if not, John, do you want to go ahead and go on to the next respondent?
Yes. Next, we're very, very happy to have with us Hunter Stern, business manager for International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 1245, who's a big supporter of transmission development and a friend of ours. Hunter, please say hello, and we're happy to have you with us.
John, thank you. And thanks to Ed and everyone at CEERT. This is a really important and I think exceptionally very timely report. I mean, we need this information. We need everybody in the same voice, voicing the same interests. And expanding transmission is absolutely the interest that we need for our voices to carry. And this CEERT report really helps. So first and foremost, I appreciate being here. My name is Hunter Stern. I'm an assistant business manager with IBEW Local 1245. I'm also affiliated with the Coalition of California Utility Employees, which lobbies on behalf of utility employees with the IOUs throughout the state of California. And we do work here, and I'm in Sacramento today. We do work in Sacramento as well as at the Public Utilities Commission. So we're thrilled with the report. My role here, among other things, is to let people know that we're eager to put our members to work building this infrastructure. You know, as the report outlines, as both John and Ed in particular outlined in their summaries of the report, we're way behind on transmission construction and building the new infrastructure we need to take advantage of all the new clean energy projects that we've built so far in the state of California and will build in the future. The IBEW has expanded our training program here in California for workers. We have a joint program that signatory contractors and IBEW members that are the construction workers that build transmission lines, the transmission towers and other apparatus associated with electrical infrastructure, as well as all the interconnection work, putting these new clean energy projects, putting that electricity on the grid. We opened at the end of 2021, December 2021, a new training facility in Woodland, California, near Sacramento. We've expanded our original training facility, which was down in Riverside, substantially, and we just made the decision to simply build a new facility in Southern California to replace that Riverside facility. When all of this training infrastructure is built out, the IBEW will, along with our contractors, will be able to have up to 500 new linemen trained and entering the workforce as line workers a year going forward. And just 3 years ago, it was more like 150 to 200 annually. It's a 4-year training program, so it does take some time, and it's a earn as you learn concept. So you are out working as well as doing classroom work, as well as getting direct supervision in these facilities. So we will have the workforce. It's particularly important to accelerate the transmission work now because we do also have a pretty deep work bench, as it were. We've had a lot of line workers out from other parts of the country doing wildfire mitigation work. That work isn't over by any stretch, but it is morphing into different kinds of work, particularly undergrounding distribution and some transmission, but mostly distribution in high wildfire areas. And that means the number of line workers needed for that work is actually going to reduce over the next 3 to 5 years. And it's perfect timing for those workers to flip over and begin building this transmission infrastructure. So for those reasons, the timing of this is ideal. As I said before, we're already behind. You know, we see some of the conclusions, you know, agree with all the findings. Some of the solutions we're not 100% sure about, but I will emphasize, you know, never let perfect be the enemy of good. And I will emphasize that the reconductoring and expanded use of direct current, new technology, improved technology to increase capacity on existing transmission corridors and new corridors which will be built is key. it makes this program, this process, this infrastructure much more financially viable. And every additional electron you can put on the wires makes it reduces cost to individual customers. And I know CEERT and others will join IBEW in pushing for federal legislation, both for siting and permitting, so that we can accelerate these projects, these transmission projects, as well as some kind of ITC, income tax benefit for the construction of only those transmission projects that will benefit regional areas and benefit national security interests, because we're leaving a lot of things on the table, not just around clean energy. We're also leaving military bases and other remote areas potentially at risk of extended outages without this transmission work. So there's lots and lots and lots of reasons, and we're very pleased to support the report, and we're very pleased to be able to evangelize with CEERT to get this work done. And with that, Bijan, I'll be happy to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Hunter. I can't tell you how grateful I am for the level of detail that you provided in terms of your plans, and you've hit on the crucial importance of the expansion of the workforce and the training that's important. One of the issues that's been slowing us down is the utilities have been delaying interconnections in some cases because of workforce issues. And as we, one of the observations we've had in the development of this report is that most of our transmission work has been one at a time, case by case, not looking at the big picture. And what we need to do now is build multiple lines at the same time, which is going to require us to have a different way of going about it. So anyway, thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Ray Leon. Ray is the founder of the Latino Empowerment Project and also the mayor of Huron. He is a founding director of the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition and a member of the California Air Resources Board Environmental Justice Advisory Committee. So Mayor Leon.
Hello, good morning, buenos dias, and I'm the executive director and founder of the Latino Equity Advocacy and Policy Institute. And it's my pleasure to be here with all of you because I feel that not enough is known of what's happening in the San Joaquin Valley in regards to a lot of things. My good friend mentioned the particular pollution, how bad it is. San Joaquin Valley is one of the most contaminated air basins in the nation. It's also the region that has the counties that have produced all the agricultural products, and therefore many farm worker communities, one of them being Huron. It's one of the 4 poorest cities in the state of California, although it is a community within the county with the highest ag revenue in the nation. And so we have been observing, number one, a big supporter of clean energy. We need to do it. The climate crisis is real, and we need to figure out the climate resiliency because it's not going to get any prettier. But part of the impact is going to be economic, and those that are going to be hit first and the worst, and it's already happening now. We are already seeing it. Are low-income families, farm workers, for example, in my community of Huron, which is very much a farm worker community. And that's what's, I think, alarming for us, because my thing is in learning that 1,000 acres of land getting put out of production, whether it be from the drought or because almonds are being used, orchards, or many times also today, solar parks, and so I did some digging, and due to the drought, there's many less jobs in my area. We are one of the lechuga siblings, one of the lettuce siblings, Salinas Valley, Huron, and Yuma. We used to get lechuga twice a year in the early spring, late fall, which would bring about 8,000 migrant farm workers. So you can imagine the economic activity that we would see and we would have that'll have a vibrant economy going with the small businesses in town, and everybody would really win in that scenario. But due to the drought, you could barely tell that lettuce season takes place. You know, when we used to harvest broccoli, cabbage, different sorts of lettuce, and cauliflower. Now it's just iceberg lettuce, and it lasts probably a couple of weeks, and it's probably about 200 workers that are being brought from an hour away, so they're not even living in the community, and so the economic impacts are very real due to the drought, and in looking into the solar parks and learning that 1,000 acres of land, when put out of production, is costing the community or the local economies within a span of 20 years over about $100 million in that period, and it raises a lot of concern. So I think let me repeat that we support solar. We gotta get out of producing carbon while we produce and generate energy, but we need to do it in a way where it's equity based, so that we also uplift the families most in need. Here around Huron, we probably have about 1 gigawatts worth of solar power already being generated or about to be generated, which is huge. And that to me represents a lot of money, a lot of resources. But what I guess there's a few folks that are working in the industry, and there's a lot of jobs in the beginning of it. But after they build it, it's pretty much no more employment. Very, very few employment opportunities. And we need to figure out, and I got some ideas on how we really uplift the communities that are near these operations, so that we can ensure that we aren't perpetuating poverty and we aren't undermining the future generations of these communities. So one of the things is, with the solar farms, I try to identify and calculate, what amount of money is generated from 1,000 acres, but I think I'm still not there. But I know it's in the hundreds of millions, and I know when I was at the governor's office with when Jerry Brown was in attending, I did 1 or 2 of the San Joaquin Valley Solar Initiative meetings, and all of that got streamlined, which is great because we got to make it happen, right? But at the same time, what that did was that it makes it cheaper for solar companies to bring in the operation, but the communities around those solar companies are not really benefiting. What I've seen and what I would like to encourage more, when they were putting in the transmission here south of Huron, connecting it to the PG&E plant, everybody that I met out there, they were from not only not from Huron, not only not from the San Joaquin Valley, they weren't even from California. So for me, it's a red flag in terms of, all right, so all this wealth that's going to be created in the process of accomplishing these important goals, are they not going to involve my community? Because if not, then that's a betrayal of our families that have been the food chain keepers for this country for generations. And one of the problems in our region is usually a school district. We're having a battle right here with our school district because we want a high school in our community. We've never had one, and the quality of education is questionable. So, and the kids have to travel in the bus for 3 hours round trip. But we want to educate them in our community. And our ideal would be if we could not only have them get educated in our community, we provide them scholarships, because all these companies generating all this energy want to recruit them into the discipline where they could get into the industry, whether it be through a trade or it be as a scientist, as an inventor, as any other one of those careers that then is a green career. And then we stop undermining the education of our kids to force them to get in the line of farm work, where today there's one farm worker, one ag job per 2 farm workers. So then it's a calculation, it's almost a formula to undermining this whole group of people in the region and perpetuate poverty. So what I'm saying is that how are we going to identify the opportunity to uplift families via this process of generating the transmission, of developing the transmission and generating the clean energy that we must have, to include the people that are closest to it in the state of California that have sacrificed their persons, essentially, that don't have a 401k as a farm worker, don't have benefits, many times do not have health insurance, but have been maintaining this economy that we call home. And so, my suggestion is providing scholarships for students, internships for our kids that once they get into college, they could participate in the clean energy industry. And when they graduate from college, they could be a fellow. And I think we really need to diversify and match up the demographic of our clean energy industry with that of our state of California. And Latinos make up 40%. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mayor Ray, and we appreciate your leadership and know that transitioning the Central Valley on clean energy is also an opportunity to transition on equity and equality. And as I think you have said, turn stakeholders into shareholders. So one of the opportunities that we hope to see is the opportunity for multi-year build out and coordinating our workforce training and development with the scale of the build out so that we can, because instead of, as you mentioned, one project at a time, the workforce comes and then they leave and then nothing goes on. What we're talking about is really building sustained multi-year projects, both transmission and solar and storage. And there's an opportunity for more equitable outcomes, which we hope that we can work together on. So with conclusion of our respondents, now we have an opportunity to respond to some questions. There are some questions in the chat. First up is Nancy Rader's question about what specifically does the CPC need to do in the IRP-TP process to reduce reliance on LA gas plants. I think the answer is that they have to decide that they want to retire gas plants and communicate that to CalISO. Unfortunately, under the IRP, the modeling that the PUC is now relying on continues to have almost all the gas plant capacity online in 2045. And while we understand we're going to have to keep some gas around, what we'd really like, and what Ed mentioned, is for the PUC to send a clear signal to the CalISO, specifically with regard to the undersea cable from Diablo to Scattergood, that there is enough benefit to the investor-owned utilities in reducing our dependence on gas to move that project up. As Ed said, there is supply chain issues looming both nationally and internationally with the equipment that we want. So we really are pressing the PUC to send a letter to the ISO saying that despite the ongoing reliance on some gas, it's an important policy priority for the PUC to begin a process of phasing out gas with the availability of additional transmission like the undersea cable.
And I'll just add, John, that SB 887 does require the PUC to address which the retirement of gas plants. The report's due to the legislature in March of 2024. What would be extraordinarily helpful from the Public Utilities Commission is to get some earlier indication, an earlier interim report that identifies, where they're going in the planning for the retirement of the gas plants. Transmission is obviously a necessary element of this. It's not the complete element. There's going to be need for resources that are built in the LA basin, and as Nancy points out in her question, that needs to take place in the integrated resource plan, where there's some specific identification of resources that need to be developed to meet local capacity, local resource adequacy requirements.
Thank you, Ed. We have another question that I don't know the answer to from our friend Fred Morris, and that is how many workers on average are needed per acre for farming? I just don't know. If Ray is still with us, maybe he can answer that question. Do you have an idea, Ray, of how many workers per acre of agriculture, or does that depend on the crop?
So I think somewhat depending on the crop. If it's an orchard, it's not labor intensive. But if it's like tomato, market tomato, onion, garlic, then it's much more intensive. But I think in general, what the account is, 1,000 acres in 1 year, it's about 50 jobs on the field. But those 50 jobs on the field and the product that they harvest provide another 200 jobs off the field. So 1,000 acres gives you about 250 jobs. And off the calculation that I've gotten, it's about $111 million in a 20-year period. So that's a lot of money that is being plucked out of the region. And I always think about that phrase where it's a death by 1,000 pricks, or what is it? Death by 1,000 slices or something. But that's kind of what's going on, you know, with the air quality issues and the impact to health, and the doctor bills are no joke. We still don't have universal healthcare. We're still waiting for that. But I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our time. We're just about an hour, a little bit over, right on time. So unless there's additional questions or comments, we're going to thank everybody for being with us. As Maya has told you, the meeting is being recorded, and we can make available access to the recording. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks so much for participating and taking the time to listen to our work.
Thank you, Vijan. Thank you, Ed. Good job, everybody. Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.